In understanding human behaviors assessment 2, we are required to touch base with what we covered in assessment 1, which was threefold. Firstly, we had to look at where we fit in to Erik Erikson's psychosocial stages, and then we needed to provide a theoretical framework in terms of the development of my personality and identity. According to Erikson's model of psychosocial stages as found in McLeod 2008, the ego develops as it successfully resolves crises that are distinctively social in nature, which includes establishing a sense of trust in others, developing a sense of identity in others, and helping the next generation prepare for the future. Given my age of 30, I found myself in stage 6 of Erikson's psychosocial stages, which is intimacy versus isolation, and involves exploring relationships that lead towards longer-term commitments with someone other than a family member. Now, I believe that I have established the first part, which is creating meaningful relationships with friends, but I have not yet established a romantic relationship, and I am currently still trying to find the one, for lack of a better word. I have had relationships in the past that have not worked out due to various reasons. One of them could be related to the fact that I am a disabled man who resides in a wheelchair, and that could have been the reason for the ending of the other relationships, although it was stated that it wasn't, and it also could be one of the reasons why I struggle to find meaningful romantic relationships. In terms of my identity, I will utilize Tufts and Turner's social identity theory as found in Willig and Stanton Rogers 2019, which proposes that people's individual psychological processes and experiences, which crucially includes their identities, are transformed by being in a group setting. My identity stems from two educational institutions, namely Pretoria Boys High School and the University of Pretoria. These two institutions pride themselves in the values they uphold, which is respect, humility, honor, integrity, cooperation, and excellence in whatever their students set out to do, both academically and in extramural pursuits. I am proud of my affiliation to both institutions and have adopted many values into my own identity. Turner later clarified that stereotyping can be very fluid and shift according to the reference group. This is indicative of how I approach old boys functions of Pretoria Boys High School and the adaptation of my language. Usually my language is very formal, yet when I attend old boys functions, I switch to what we refer to as boys eye lingo. An example of this is the word oak. In traditional English, to use the word oak to describe a man or a fellow male figure, it is spelled O-K-E, whereas at Boys Eye we use the other spelling O-A-K, which refers to the oak tree. In terms of my personality, I utilize James's 3 aspects of me as found in Willig and Stanton Rogers 2019. The 3 aspects of me involves 3 different versions of the self, including the personal self, the social self, and the relational self. The personal self is self-aware of being me. It is conscious of one's own thoughts and feelings but one can be aware of having some unconscious ones. It is an individual self developed from childhood into adulthood and includes its own personality, own unique set of values, attitudes, and beliefs. Now, I have a good understanding of myself due to the reflection in the form of meditation that I do every day due to my paralysis. I am able to see the changes within myself and how I have changed since childhood. My own set of values, attitudes, and beliefs, although concrete, is fluid and have changed according to my development and educating myself in a variety of topics. The social self is defined by the social context and can be a collection of selves that are used in a variety of social settings. And includes the self that is defined by one's occupation. I am definitely aware that I have different selves when in social settings. When I'm with friends and families, my social self aligns very similar to my personal self, although not in its entirety. When at formal functions or engaging with acquaintances or strangers, my social self is more cordial. And lastly, the relational self stems from a person's interconnected relationships with others, including friends, family, colleagues, and the like. This self is defined in terms of the expectations a person has of others and their expectation of the individual, which exists within an interconnected network of duties, obligations, responsibilities, and entitlements. I have established strong relational selves with the various role players in my life that ebb and flow depending on the strength and nature of the relationship. I have an intrinsic understanding of the expectations placed on me because of these relationships, while the others understand their role. In terms of gender and sexual identity, I will utilize this social learning theory as defined by Bandura, 1977, which argues that attitudes and behaviors are learned from the surrounding environment, and that individuals acquire masculine and feminine characteristics and skills using significant others as role models. The concept of socialization was introduced to refer to ways in which individuals learn gender-appropriate behavior, which is done by socializing agents such as parents, family members, teachers, peers, and the media, which convey repeated messages both verbally and through their actions. Through their exposure to these messages, children learn gender-appropriate behavior patterns and attitudes. Now, although I have said this and that I identify as a cisgender male, which means I identify with my birth sex, I was born with male genitalia, and I prescribe to male stereotypes, I am aware as a disabled person that people need to be allowed to choose their identification and what makes them feel satisfaction in terms of their role in the greater scheme of the human race. So although I am a heterosexual cisgender male, I believe that wherever you stand, both gender-wise as well as your sexual orientation, is completely up to the individual, and society should not have a say in that. It is equally important for me to note that I agree with Bandura's theory, because role models definitely do play a huge role in your identification. And I feel that with my own life and my own identification, both gender and sexually, I have been influenced by those around me and have used that to form my own identity. To answer the question regarding how thinking and feeling has influenced my behavior, as well as the significance of being aware of my cognition and emotions in a counseling context, I will use Bartlett 1932 theoretical framework that involves schemas. A schema, according to Bartlett 1932, is a cognitive structure that represents knowledge about a concept, including its attributes and the relations among these attributes. According to Bartlett, when people take in information, they interpret through their existing knowledge, and it is this interpreted version that is recalled, not the original. Bartlett continues to suggest that the way in which this is done is that remembered knowledge gets organized into schemas, and that it is these schemas that enable us to make sense of what happens around us. Schemas are more powerful than mere categories or even semantic networks at encoding complex interconnections. They not only represent information about what things are, they are also tidied up and rationalized through interpretation and reasoning into a more coherent whole. Schemas thus guide information processing by structuring experiences, regulating behavior, and providing bases for making inferences and interpretations. Having discussed cognition, we will now move on to feelings. And basically, feelings coupled with reasoning motivate our behaviors and actions. How I think and how I feel definitely influences my behavior. For instance, if something would make me angry or offended, my behavior will then change to becoming more defensive. While if something makes me happy, my behavior will represent that feeling. While being aware of both my cognition as well as my feelings plays an integral role in my ability to be a successful counselor, as I can only help others to understand their emotions and their processes if I understand my own emotions and processes. I cannot be empathetic to others if I'm not first empathetic to myself. I cannot enforce boundaries with others if I don't enforce boundaries with myself. And the list goes on and on and on. In order to help others mentally, I need to be able to help myself mentally and to understand them, both my processes of cognition as well as my feelings and emotions. I need to understand them first before I can even attempt to help somebody else. The final question of assessment 2 revolves around the practices I engage with to ensure my well-being and the general importance of maintaining one's well-being. The theory behind my approach to my own well-being is Seligman 2018, where his acronym of PERMA, which stands for positive emotion, engagement, relationships, meaning and accomplishment, best speaks to how I deal with my well-being. So let's start off with positive emotion, which relates to my autonomy, which basically in a nutshell is my positive emotion comes from the fact that I understand that I am a unique individual. There's only one of me, that I have a role to play that I'm valued, that I am intelligent, and that I have impact, that I have an impact on the world around me in whatever role I am currently functioning under, whether that is as a mental health practitioner, as within the rugby world, as an old boy of Pretoria Boys, as a son, as a potential uncle once my sister's child is born, and the list can go on and on. The second stage of PERMA is engagement, which entails environmental mastery. Now, this is me being able to become better at my skills, to improve as a human being, with the situations around me. So those could be reading up more about different psychological trends. It could also mean improving my knowledge of rugby, whether the history of rugby or the laws and the technical aspects of rugby. But mastering the environment around me will then lead to more positive engagement and a greater sense of well-being. The third stage of PERMA is relationships, which correlates to personal growth. Now, this is something that I've been doing very successfully for the last decade or so, where I have constantly pruned the relationships around me. And if it is not a mutual beneficial relationship to me and the other person, but especially towards me, then I will slowly but surely cut that relationship out of my life, and if necessary, make it a drastic and immediate decision to end that relationship. The fourth arm of PERMA is meaning, which is related to self-acceptance. Now, this is a big one for me because of my disability and the anxiety and insecurity that came with it in the beginning. I found meaning and value in my life because I've accepted my disability. I've accepted that there's nothing that can be done. But although I've accepted it, I still understand that even in my paralyzed state as a C4-5 quadriplegic, I am able to give back and to be a functioning and contributing member of society. The last arm is accomplishment, which goes hand in hand with purpose in life. Now, this is very well developed in terms of my own life and how I see myself in the world. I know that I have a purpose. Some purposes I have yet to discover. Others I've started the journey, such as my journey in mental health as a budding counselor and hopefully one day a psychologist and a force in psychology. I really would like to create my own theories with regard to positive psychology and how people deal with trauma in such a positive way, such as myself. So all in all, I understand that I do have a purpose, and I'm slowly but surely accomplishing that purpose. To round up this assessment, I will just need to discuss my views on what I do for my own well-being, and that is to ensure that I get what I need. I'm very, very good at identifying what I need in order to lead a happy and positive life. That basically stems down to reflection in the form of meditation, knowing when I can and cannot be with people, when I can invest my time and energy into something, and when I know I need to take a step back and understand that there's bigger things that I need to focus on. Thank you so much for listening to or for watching my video on assessment 2 for understanding human behavior.